Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Breaking news just 17 minutes ago. An Israeli source says Prime Minister Netanyahu will be visiting the White House and President Trump a week from today. Joining me to talk about that prospect as well as the imminence of an accord with Syria maybe and the bomb damage or battle damage assessment of his, Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the UN, former deputy prime minister of the state of Israel, and probably the most ubiquitous commentator for the last 30 years on all things Israel, and we're glad to have him here. Dr. Oren, can I start with Syria? What is the deal on a deal with Syria?
Okay, the deal with Syria is you have a Syrian government, the Ashara government, which is trying to establish itself and trying to integrate with the region. It's an enemy of Iran, and the enemy is your enemy in the Middle East. The enemy is your friend, so we are friends now with Syria. Israeli army is occupying part of southern Syria. It's the buffer zone that was granted to Syria by Dr. Kissinger and actually Gerald Ford in 1974. And I think that would be on the negotiating table. The question is, would the Golan Heights be on the negotiating table? Certainly every time we've negotiated with Syria in the past, and there have been several attempts to reach peace with Syria, the Golan Heights has been on the table. As a person who has promoted very rapid Israeli settlement of the Golan Heights, unfortunately I haven't really succeeded so far. My big fear is that the Golan Heights would remain on the with the negotiating table, and I would hope now that President Trump has recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights that it would not be up for grabs. It's an interesting prospect. Syria was created by the French to serve French interests. After the French left in the 1940s, Syria was always held together by a preponderance of brutal central power. That's what the Assads did for 5 decades. And it's yet to be seen whether this particular government will be able to exert that type of brutal central power that will hold Syria together, because it's a conglomerate of many tribes, many ethnicities, different, oh boy, religions, many different religions, and what holds it together. One of the ways it can be held together is through American investment. The UN has estimated the cost of rebuilding Syria after the civil war as upwards of $30 billion. And I'm sure somebody I know who's keen on real estate would love to get involved in rebuilding Syria. It'd be good. So prospects, I think, are real. It all depends, and I cannot stress this, it all depends on what happens with Iran.
Well, let's talk a little bit now on your own personal BDA, whether that means battle damage assessment or bomb damage assessment. I've read and listened to everything I can. What does Dr. Michael Oren think after a week of absorbing all the information that's available and probably some that isn't publicly available?
Well, I'm asked by this on virtually every interview. And, it wasn't obliterated. It was Fordo and the other facilities obliterated, as Donald Trump has claimed, or was it only extensive damage? Has the Iranian nuclear program is set back 6 months, 1 year, 3 weeks? You get it all. And the bottom line, Hugh, is that it's all irrelevant. It's a moot point. Whether it's obliterated or partially damaged or extensively damaged or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it doesn't matter. Only two things matter. One is Iran's motivation. Does Iran intend to rebuild? Period. And the next question is, if so, what does President Trump intend to do about it? And if Donald Trump keeps a credible military threat on the table, it could be an American military threat, it can be an Israeli-American military threat, it could be an Israeli military threat, as long as it's credible and on the table. And the Iranians know if they start putting a brick back on a brick at Fordo, then they will be punished, and be punished very hard. That is what will enable Syria to retain its independence, it will retain Lebanon to retain its independence, and both countries will be free to enter the Abraham Accords.
So, Mr. Ambassador, in terms of the likelihood of another strike, you think it's contingent upon Iran's good behavior, but if they verge again into bad behavior, we've broken the previously unbroken chain of non-action against Iran, and so it will be more easily broken a second time?
I guarantee they're going to attempt it. Of course they're going to attempt it. And you're going to see it in a couple of days. And unless you establish what a violation is, unless you clarify, unequivocally to the Iranians that brick on a brick at Fordo will elicit a powerful American or Israeli-American or an Israeli military response, they will try it. And why wouldn't they? From an Iranian perspective, things may look very different. Yes, this is one of the great military victories in history. They'll be studying it at West Point for the next 50 to 100 years, I guarantee you. There's been nothing like it. And yet, Iranians may view it differently. As far as they're concerned, they held up against the world's largest superpower for 12 days. They inflicted prohibitive damage on Israel. They learned our weak point. And at the end of it, the Iranians fired a couple of missiles at Qatar, and America sued for a ceasefire. Even got Israel actually enforced a ceasefire on Israel. So from an Iranian perspective, this could look differently. And I would bet my boots that there's people in Tehran said, okay, well, let's start building. And we can do it quietly at first. We can wait Donald Trump out. 3 years is nothing. They think in terms of decades and centuries. We can wait him out. And so there has to be a strong agreement between Israel and the United States about what constitutes a violation. And if violations do occur, what will be the U.S./Israeli response?
Now, Dr. Oren, you've been around diplomacy for a long time. You know the way that the Middle East thinks as well. They neither could defend themselves nor could they play. They killed 38 Israelis, and that's a bad thing. And they did some damage to the Haifa refinery and destroyed some buildings. But that was it. After all these years of saber rattling and posturing and death to the little Satan, death to the big Satan, they could not defend against one strike. They couldn't bring down one airplane. Doesn't that have a profound impact on their psyche?
One would think. One would think. And yet they can spin it in different ways. This is a country that held out for 8 years during attacks by Iraq and paid just incalculable prices for it. And so they may conclude that, hey, we weathered this. We're tough. We can play rope-a-dope with these people. You understand what that means. I understand what that means. And they will try to see how far they can get. Now, they could turn around and say, well, President Trump has offered us $30 billion for reconstruction. We could accept that. We could maybe get into some type of regional architecture for peaceful nuclear energy production. But behind the scenes, we're going to keep rebuilding our Islamic empire because that's who they are. This is in their DNA. And there's no amount of, I think, even threat or incentive is going to change exactly who they are. We made similar mistakes. We made similar mistakes with Hamas. We thought that by paying them off and letting Palestinian workers into Israel, that they would be quiescent to become a quiet, nice neighbor. It wasn't the case because this is in Hamas's DNA. So the only true way we can keep that DNA, this is going to be mixing metaphors, DNA in a bottle, is by putting the cork on it. And that cork is a military cork.
Well, let me turn to Gaza then in the 2.5 minutes we've got. It seems to me that the Hamas remnant has no resupply nor prospect of resupply. Do you think there is a deal in the future with them that gets them out before they wither away and also gets the Israeli hostages out?
Well, they won't wither away. They'll always have some type of military capabilities. And they've been recruiting young people like there's no tomorrow. And they may have as many as 30,000 people under arms, but they also may be under 15. Listen, Israel's hand has been greatly strengthened here. Netanyahu's hand has been greatly strengthened here. America's hand has been greatly strengthened here, and Hamas's hand has been commensurately weakened. So I think those conditions would augur well for a deal. We're still left with the question of what the deal looks like. And the deal that would be acceptable to Israel, which be a prolonged ceasefire, a release of the hostages, and at the end of the ceasefire, Israel would have the option of renewing the fight against Hamas. Hamas has not agreed to that. As far as I know, they are not agreeing to that, which means under that, Hamas would simply give up its assets. The hostages are assets, and it would face annihilation at the hands of the IDF. Therefore, Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire, and a ceasefire that is embedded in and guaranteed by a decision of the Security Council that would tie Israel's hand, and Israel's not going to agree to that. Now, diplomatically, maybe you can fudge this and say that it'll be a ceasefire and there'll be negotiations over a permanent ceasefire, in which case you will probably get some of the hostages back, but not of the other bats. That's what Steve Witkoff was working on before the 12-day Iran war, something like that. It is possible. But it is also possible that Israel will continue to move the population of Gaza into the southern part of the Strip. The northern side of the Strip then will be stripped of Hamas, and I don't know, according to President Trump's plan, they're going to be building hotels there.
All right, I have one more question, and I'm going to put it on the table and then come back to you after you go to break and play it in the next hour. It's this. This show will be 25 years old on July 10. You've been a regular and a much appreciated guest for at least half that period of time. However, in almost every interview, you've pointed out that Hezbollah had 150,000 rockets with which they could rain terror down on Israel. I'd like to know your assessment of Hezbollah now after not just the beepers and the pagers and the war, but after Iran collapses and Syria collapses. Does Israel have a threat on the northern front anymore? I'll come back and talk with Dr. Oren, former ambassador of Israel to the United States, about that during the break. Play it for you later in the hour. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. So I'm back with Dr. Michael Oren, former ambassador to the United States from Israel. Dr. Oren, what about my Lebanese question and Hezbollah question?
Okay, well, here's the regional answer before I get to the specific answer. And that is, Israel has defeated Hamas militarily. It has defeated Hamas strategically. Israel has defeated Hezbollah militarily. It has defeated Hamas strategically. We have to make that distinction. What does it mean? Hamas, as I mentioned earlier, may have 30,000 terrorists under arms. Hezbollah may have 80,000 terrorists under arms, maybe more. It still has a large share of its missile capability. If it wanted to, if it could, it would open fire again on Israel. But what does it mean to have it? So the military victory hasn't been complete, but the strategic victory has been complete because neither Hamas nor Hezbollah pose a serious threat to Israel anymore. So that's a huge victory. Similarly, we have won a military victory against Iran. Iran remains a military threat. We didn't destroy Iran. We didn't destroy Iran's leadership. We didn't destroy Iran's military. We heard it. The question is, will Iran too be a strategic victory for Israel and the United States and the West? If so, listen carefully, then our victory over both Hezbollah and Hamas will continue to be both military and strategic. If
that
Iran,
makes
again,
sense
I'm
to
going to
me.
repeat myself earlier, if Iran is allowed to regroup, to rebuild, then it will refinance and it will once again make Hezbollah what it was before last year, Hamas before October 7th. It may take time because they think in terms I said earlier. They don't think in terms of weeks and months. They think in terms of decades. It may take time. The whole key lies in translating our military victory over Iran into a permanent strategic victory.
So very last question, Dr. Oren. Are there forces in Lebanon allied with Israel to keep the boot on Hezbollah's neck?
Yes, definitely. I think there are people in Lebanon who very much like the peace with us. Can you imagine what Lebanese-Israel peace would do for this region? Oh boy, what a
Yep.
It's our ancient allies. King Hiram provided the cedars of Lebanon for Solomon's temple. We go way back, and Lebanese and Israelis traditionally had a very good relationship. It wasn't well before 1948. We always had a very good relationship with a strong Jewish community there. So there's no historic animosity between our peoples, and certainly we're both Western-looking in so many ways. So there's a lot to build on there. With Syria, too, it'd be very interesting. Extraordinary, transformative for the entire Middle East. During the break, we were saying that this is the most significant event to occur in decades in international relations, certainly in regional relations. I wrote a book some years ago. We can plug it. It's now available at famously reduced prices called 6 Days of War. The subtitle was June 1967 and the Making of the Modern Middle East. And the thesis of the book was you couldn't understand the making of the modern Middle East without understanding those 6 days. Well, you're not going to be able to understand the 21st century Middle East unless you understand this war, which is utterly transformative and can be truly, truly permanent if America and Israel continue to stand shoulder to shoulder and prevent Iran from reemerging as a regional threat.
We hear it, and we agree, and I appreciate the extra time, Dr. Oren. Thank you so much for your time today. Follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren.